The little pink plus sign stared back at me, a beacon of hope and joy in the sterile bathroom light. I couldn't stop the smile from spreading across my face. After months of trying, Daniel and I were finally going to be parents. I clutched the pregnancy test to my chest, my heart racing with excitement. "Daniel," I called out, rushing down the stairs. "Daniel, I have amazing news." The living room was empty, but I could hear muffled voices coming from the kitchen. As I approached, Daniel's deep laugh mingled with a familiar, shrill cackle that made my stomach drop. No, it couldn't be. I rounded the corner to find my husband and his mother, Evelyn, sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by moving boxes. "Miranda, there you are," Daniel said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Mom's here." Evelyn's perfectly coiffed silver hair gleamed as she turned to me. Her lips curled in what I'm sure she thought was a welcoming smile. "Miranda, dear, how lovely to see you." I forced a smile, my hand instinctively moving to cover my still flat stomach. "Evelyn, what a surprise! I didn't know you were visiting." Daniel cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. "Actually, honey, Mom's not just visiting. She's moving in with us." The world tilted on its axis. "What?" I managed to choke out. "Now, Miranda," Evelyn cooed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Daniel and I thought it would be best if I was here to help out. You're so busy with your little teaching job after all." I turned to Daniel, searching his face for any sign that this was all some cruel joke. "When exactly were you planning on telling me about this?" He at least had the decency to look sheepish. "I was going to tell you tonight, sweetheart. It all happened so fast. Mom's lease was up, and well, we have the spare room." "The nursery," I whispered, my hand tightening around the pregnancy test hidden behind my back. "What was that, dear?" Evelyn asked, her eyes narrowing. I straightened my spine, meeting her gaze. "Nothing. Daniel, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" We stepped into the hallway, and I could feel Evelyn's eyes boring into my back. "Daniel, how could you make this decision without talking to me first?" I hissed, trying to keep my voice low. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I once found endearing. "Miranda, she's my mother. What was I supposed to do, let her be homeless?" "That's not the point, and you know it," I said, my frustration mounting. "We're supposed to be partners. We make decisions like this together." I know. "I'm sorry," he said, but his apology felt hollow. "Look, it's just temporary, okay? Until she finds a new place." I wanted to argue further, to tell him about the baby growing inside me, but the words stuck in my throat. This should have been a moment of celebration, not conflict. "Fine," I said, defeated, "but we need to talk about this more later." As we re-entered the kitchen, Evelyn was unpacking a box, filling our cabinets with her gaudy china. "Oh, Miranda," she said, not bothering to look at me, "I hope you don't mind, but I've taken the liberty of rearranging things a bit. This kitchen could use a woman's touch." I bit my tongue, tasting blood. "Actually, Evelyn, I'd prefer if you didn't." "Nonsense, dear," she interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "You'll see, this will be so much better. Now, where do you keep your good silver? The set I saw earlier was rather quaint." I watched in horror as she systematically dismantled the kitchen I had so carefully organized. Daniel stood by, silent and useless, as his mother steamrolled over every protest I attempted to make. As the evening wore on, my joy at the pregnancy faded, replaced by a gnawing dread. How was I supposed to bring a child into this world when I couldn't even control what happened in my own home? Later that night, as I lay in bed next to a snoring Daniel, I placed a hand on my stomach and whispered a quiet promise. "Don't worry, little one. Mommy will figure this out, somehow." The morning's sickness hit me like a freight train, sending me rushing to the bathroom. As I knelt on the cold tile floor, heaving into the toilet, I heard Evelyn's voice outside the door. "Miranda, dear, are you all right in there?" I wiped my mouth, struggling to catch my breath. "I'm fine, Evelyn. Just not feeling well." The door creaked open, and Evelyn's perfectly manicured hand appeared, holding a glass of water. "Here, drink this. It'll settle your stomach." I accepted the water gratefully, but as I reached for it, my eyes caught sight of something on the vanity. My driver's license was peeking out from beneath Evelyn's makeup bag. "What's my ID doing here?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Evelyn's eyes widened for a split second before her face smoothed into a mask of innocence. "Oh, I must have accidentally swept it up with my things when I was tidying earlier. Silly me." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As Evelyn left, I quickly checked my wallet. My bank book was missing too. Later that day, I cornered Daniel in his home office. "We need to talk about your mother," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He sighed, not looking up from his computer. "What is it now, Miranda?" "I found my ID in her things, and my bank book is missing. Don't you think that's strange?" Daniel finally met my gaze, his expression a mixture of exasperation and disbelief. "Are you seriously accusing my mother of stealing? She's probably just trying to help organize things." "By taking my personal documents?" I countered, my frustration mounting. "Miranda, you're being paranoid," he said dismissively. "Mom's just trying to help. Maybe you misplaced your bank book." I opened my mouth to argue further, but a wave of nausea washed over me. I stumbled, catching myself on the edge of his desk. Daniel's face softened slightly. "Are you okay? You've been sick a lot lately." This was my chance. I took a deep breath, ready to share the news of my pregnancy, but before I could speak, Evelyn's voice rang out from downstairs. "Daniel, honey, can you come help me with something?" He stood up immediately. "We'll talk later, okay? Try to get some rest." As he left the room, I felt a tear slip down my cheek. How had my life become this? My husband more concerned with his mother's needs than his wife's well-being. That evening, I sat at the dinner table, pushing food around my plate, as Evelyn regaled us with stories of Daniel's childhood. And then little Daniel said, "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to marry you." Evelyn cackled, reaching out to pinch Daniel's cheek. He laughed along with her, seemingly oblivious to my discomfort. I set down my fork, my appetite completely gone. "If you'll excuse me," I murmured, standing up. "But you've hardly touched your food," Evelyn said, her voice laced with false concern. "Are you watching your figure, dear? You have been looking a bit puffy lately." I froze, my hand instinctively moving to my stomach. "I'm just not feeling well," I managed to say. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of something poking out of Evelyn's purse on the counter. The corner of my bank book was just visible. My heart raced as I approached, casually reaching for a glass of water. In one swift motion, I snatched the bank book and slipped it into my pocket. "Miranda?" Daniel called. "What are you doing?" I turned, forcing a smile. "Just getting some water. I think I'll go lie down." As I climbed the stairs, I could hear Evelyn's voice, low and insistent. "Daniel, I'm worried about Miranda. She's been acting so strange lately. Do you think she might be unstable?" I clutched the railing, my knuckles turning white. This woman was trying to turn my husband against me, and worse, she was succeeding. In the safety of our bedroom, I opened the bank book with shaking hands. My blood ran cold as I saw unfamiliar transactions, large withdrawals I had never made. At that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about Evelyn moving in. This was war, and I was fighting for my marriage, my home, and the future of my unborn child. The smell of bacon wafted up the stairs, turning my stomach. I groaned, pushing myself out of bed. Another day in this house of horrors. As I made my way downstairs, I heard Daniel and Evelyn's voices in the kitchen. "Now, Daniel," Evelyn cooed, "a man needs a hearty breakfast. Miranda should be up making this for you." I paused at the bottom of the stairs, my blood boiling. "Mom, Miranda's been feeling under the weather lately," Daniel replied, his tone apologetic. "Nonsense," Evelyn scoffed. "In my day, we didn't let a little queasiness stop us from taking care of our husbands." I'd heard enough. I stormed into the kitchen, startling them both. "Good morning," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "I see you're discussing my shortcomings as a wife." Daniel at least had the decency to look ashamed. Evelyn, however, merely raised an eyebrow. "Well, if the shoe fits, dear." I turned to Daniel, my patience wearing thin. "And what do you think about this, Daniel? Do you agree that I should be up at the crack of dawn, slaving over a hot stove for you?" He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. "Miranda, you know that's not what we meant." "Oh, I think that's exactly what you meant," I snapped. "Well, let me make something clear. I am your wife, not your servant. And you," I turned to Evelyn, "are a guest in our home. It's about time you started acting like one." Evelyn's face turned an alarming shade of red. "How dare you speak to me like that? Daniel, are you going to let her talk to your mother this way?" Daniel looked between us, clearly torn. "Ladies, please, can't we all just get along?" I laughed bitterly. "Get along? Your mother has been undermining me since the moment she moved in, and you've done nothing but enable her." Now, Miranda, Daniel started, his tone patronizing, I think you're overreacting. Mom's just trying to help. Help? I exploded. Is that what you call it? She's taken over our home, criticized everything I do, and now she's trying to turn you against me, and you're letting her. Daniel's face hardened. That's enough, Miranda. I won't have you disrespecting my mother like this. I stared at him, shocked. Your mother? What about your wife? What about our family? What family? Evelyn interjected. All I see is a woman who can't even take care of her husband properly. Something inside me snapped. Oh, I'll show you family, I hissed, my hand moving to my stomach. I'm pregnant, you insufferable witch. The kitchen fell silent. Daniel's jaw dropped and Evelyn's eyes narrowed to slits. Pregnant? Daniel stammered. Why didn't you tell me? I've been trying to, I said, my voice breaking. But you've been too busy catering to your mother's every whim to notice anything about me. Evelyn recovered quickly, her shock morphing into a saccharine smile. Oh, how wonderful, Daniel. You're going to be a father. We must start preparing right away. Miranda, dear, you'll need to cut back on work. A mother's place is in the home, after all. I whirled on her. No, absolutely not. I love my job and I'm not giving it up. But who will take care of the baby? Evelyn pressed. Surely you don't expect Daniel to change diapers and warm bottles? I turned to my husband, praying he'd stand up for me, for us. Daniel? He ran a hand through his hair, looking conflicted. Well, honey, Mom has a point. Someone needs to be home with the baby. In that moment, I saw my future flash before my eyes. Trapped in this house under Evelyn's thumb, with a husband who'd never stand up for me, I couldn't let that happen. No, I said, my voice steady and cold. If that's how you both feel, then things need to change. Now. I grabbed my car keys from the counter. I'm going to work. When I get back, we're going to have a serious conversation about the future of this family. All of us. As I walked out the door, I heard Evelyn's voice behind me. Daniel, we can't let her treat us this way. Something must be done. I slammed the door, my hands shaking. This was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was fighting back, and I wasn't going to lose. The weeks following my pregnancy announcement were a blur of tension and exhaustion. My morning sickness had intensified, leaving me drained and weak. Yet Evelyn's demands never ceased, and Daniel's indifference grew more pronounced with each passing day. One evening I stumbled into the kitchen, my head pounding and my stomach churning. The sight that greeted me made my blood boil. Evelyn was at the stove, stirring a pot of what smelled like her infamous beef stew. The very smell that had been making me nauseous for days. Evelyn, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I thought I asked you not to cook that. The smell makes me sick. She turned, her face a mask of innocence. Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I must have forgotten. Daniel mentioned he was craving it, and well, a good wife should cater to her husband's needs, don't you think? I gripped the counter, fighting back a wave of nausea. Where is Daniel? Working late again, poor dear. Evelyn cooed. He's been so stressed lately, I wonder why. The implication in her tone was clear. Before I could respond, a sharp pain shot through my abdomen. I gasped, doubling over. Evelyn's eyes widened in mock concern. Oh my, are you all right? Perhaps you should lie down. I'll take care of everything here. I wanted to argue, to stand my ground, but another wave of pain hit me. Defeated, I retreated to the bedroom. Hours later, I woke to raised voices downstairs. Groggy and disoriented, I made my way to the top of the stairs. Daniel, you need to talk some sense into that wife of yours, Evelyn was saying. She's not taking proper care of herself or this house. It's affecting you, I can tell. Mom, please, Daniel sighed. Miranda's pregnant. She's doing her best. Her best, Evelyn scoffed. When I was pregnant with you, I never let it interfere with my duties. That's what's wrong with women today, always making excuses. I'd heard enough. Swallowing my anger, I descended the stairs. Both of them fell silent as I entered the room. Miranda, Daniel started, his tone cautious. How are you feeling? Like I'm carrying your child while being treated like a burden in my own home, I snapped. How do you think I'm feeling? Evelyn clicked her tongue. Now, dear, there's no need for dramatics. We're all just concerned about you. I turned to her, my patience finally snapping. Concerned? You've done nothing but undermine and criticize me since you moved in. And you, I rounded on Daniel, have let her do it. I'm your wife, Daniel. We're having a baby. When are you going to start acting like it? Daniel's face hardened. That's enough, Miranda. Mom's right, you're being dramatic. Maybe if you tried a little harder. Tried harder? I interrupted, my voice rising. I'm growing a human being while working full-time and trying to keep this house running. What exactly would you like me to try harder at? Well, Evelyn interjected, for starters, you could. No, I held up a hand, silencing her. I don't want to hear another word from you. This is between me and my husband. Daniel stood, his face flushed with anger. Don't speak to my mother that way. She's only trying to help. Help, I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call this? Daniel, open your eyes. She's tearing us apart, and you're letting her. For a moment, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, but then Evelyn placed a hand on his arm, and his expression hardened once more. I think you need to calm down, he said coldly. Maybe you should go lie down. In that moment, something inside me broke. I looked at the man I had married, the father of my unborn child, and saw a stranger. You're right, I said, my voice eerily calm. I do need to lie down, but not here. I turned and walked out of the room, ignoring their calls behind me. As I climbed the stairs, my mind was made up. I couldn't stay in this house another night. It was time to take care of myself and my baby, even if it meant doing it alone. I stood in our bedroom, my hands shaking as I packed my suitcase. The weight of my decision pressed down on me, but I knew I had no choice. For the sake of my unborn child and my own sanity, I had to leave. As I zipped up the suitcase, the door creaked open. Daniel stood there, his face a mixture of confusion and anger. What are you doing? He demanded. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm leaving, Daniel. I can't stay here anymore. His eyes widened in disbelief. Leaving? But you're pregnant. You can't just leave. I can, and I will, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. I'm taking my maternity leave early and going to stay with my parents. Daniel's face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous, Miranda. You're overreacting. Mom and I are just trying to help you. I laughed bitterly. Help me? Is that what you call this? Your mother has taken over our home, undermined me at every turn, and you've done nothing but enable her. She's just trying to prepare you for motherhood, Daniel argued. You should be grateful for her experience. Grateful? I spat. For what? For making me feel worthless in my own home? For stealing my personal documents? For turning my husband against me? Daniel's face paled. What are you talking about? Mom would never. Open your eyes, Daniel, I shouted, my frustration finally boiling over. She's manipulating you. Can't you see that? And you're letting her destroy our marriage. Just then, Evelyn appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of concern. What's all this shouting about? It can't be good for the baby. I turned to her, my anger reaching new heights. Don't you dare pretend to care about this baby. You've done nothing but stress me out since you moved in. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. I've only been trying to help. If you can't appreciate that, maybe you're not ready to be a mother. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, my hand instinctively moving to protect my belly. Daniel stepped between us. Mom, that's enough. Miranda, you need to calm down. This stress isn't good for the baby. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The man I married, the one who promised to stand by me through thick and thin, was gone. In his place stood a mama's boy who couldn't see past his mother's manipulations. I am calm, I said, my voice steady, and I'm leaving. I won't subject myself or my child to this toxic environment any longer. I grabbed my suitcase and pushed past them, heading for the stairs. Behind me I could hear Evelyn's voice dripping with false concern. Daniel, you can't let her leave. What will people think? A pregnant woman abandoning her home and husband. I whirled around, fury coursing through me. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm protecting myself and my child from you both. Daniel's face hardened. If you walk out that door, Miranda, don't expect to come back. His words hung in the air, a final ultimatum. I looked at him, searching for any sign of the man I fell in love with, but all I saw was Evelyn's puppet, dancing to her tune. Goodbye, Daniel, I said softly. I hope one day you'll see the truth. With that, I turned and walked out the front door. As I loaded my suitcase into the car, I could hear Evelyn's voice drifting from an open window. Let her go, Daniel. She'll come crawling back when she realizes she can't do this alone. I slammed the car door shut, my resolve strengthening. I'd show them both just how wrong they were. As I pulled out of the driveway, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely. My hand rested on my belly, and I whispered a promise to my unborn child. "It's just you and me now, little one, but we're going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay." The contractions hit me like a freight train, jolting me awake in the middle of the night. I gasped, clutching my swollen belly as pain radiated through my body. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading and anticipating for months had finally arrived. "Mom," I called out, my voice strained. "Dad, it's time." My parents burst into the guest room, their faces a mixture of excitement and concern. As another contraction gripped me, I couldn't help but think of Daniel. He should be here, holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. But he wasn't, and that absence felt like a physical ache. The ride to the hospital was a blur of pain and anxiety. Between contractions, I fumbled with my phone, staring at Daniel's number. Should I call him? Did he even deserve to know? My finger hovered over the call button, but another wave of pain made the decision for me. Hours passed in a haze of agony and determination. My mother's steady presence beside me was a comfort, but it wasn't enough to fill the void left by Daniel's absence. As the final pushes approached, I felt a surge of anger and resolve. I would do this on my own. I didn't need him or his overbearing mother. With one last, earth-shattering push, my baby entered the world. The sound of her first cry filled the room, and suddenly, nothing else mattered. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, placing my daughter on my chest. I looked down at her tiny, perfect face, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Hello, Lily," I whispered, the name I'd chosen months ago finally belonging to this beautiful, real person. As I held Lily, marveling at her tiny fingers and button nose, a nurse approached with a clipboard. "Miss Thompson, we need some information for the birth certificate. Father's name?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I hesitated, my mind racing. Did Daniel deserve to be on the birth certificate? After everything that had happened, did he have the right to call himself Lily's father? Before I could answer, there was a commotion in the hallway. Raised voices echoed through the door, and my heart dropped as I recognized one of them. "I demand to see my daughter-in-law and grandchild." Evelyn's shrill voice carried into the room. "Ma'am, please calm down. Only immediate family is allowed at this time," a nurse tried to reason with her. "I am immediate family," Evelyn screeched. The door burst open, and there stood Evelyn, her face red with fury. Behind her, looking sheepish and conflicted, was Daniel. I instinctively tightened my hold on Lily, my body tensing. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice hoarse from hours of labor. Evelyn marched into the room, her eyes fixed on the bundle in my arms. "We're here to see our granddaughter, of course. Daniel, look at her. She has your nose." Daniel stepped forward, his eyes wide as he took in the sight of his daughter. "Miranda, I'm sorry. I should have been here." "You're right, you should have," I said, my voice cold. "But you weren't. You chose your mother over your wife and child." Evelyn scoffed. "Don't be so dramatic, Miranda. We're here now, and that's what matters. Now let me hold my granddaughter." She reached for Lily, and something inside me snapped. "Don't you dare touch her," I hissed, pulling Lily closer. The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Daniel looked between me and his mother, clearly torn. "Miranda, please," he pleaded. "We just want to be a part of her life." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man I once loved. But I also saw the man who had let his mother come between us, who had chosen her over me time and time again. "I think you both need to leave," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "Now." Evelyn's face contorted with rage. "You can't keep us from her. We have rights." As she lunged forward, my mother stepped between us, her voice sharp. "That's enough. Get out, both of you, before I call security." As they were ushered out of the room, I looked down at Lily, peacefully oblivious to the drama surrounding her birth. In that moment, I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. "Nurse," I called out, my voice firm. "For the birth certificate. No father listed." 3 months after Lily's birth, I stood on the doorstep of what used to be my home, my heart pounding. Lily was nestled against my chest in her carrier, blissfully unaware of the storm we were about to enter. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Daniel opened the door, his eyes widening at the sight of us. "Miranda, you're back." "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. As we stepped inside, the familiar scent of Evelyn's perfume assaulted my senses. The house looked different, colder somehow. Evelyn emerged from the kitchen, her face a mask of false concern. "Oh, Miranda dear, you're looking well," she said, her eyes darting to Lily. "And this must be our little angel." I instinctively tightened my hold on Lily. "She's my daughter, Evelyn, not yours." Daniel cleared his throat. "Let's sit down and talk, shall we?" As we settled in the living room, I couldn't help but notice how out of place I felt in what was once my own home. Daniel sat across from me, while Evelyn hovered nearby, her eyes never leaving Lily. "I've come to collect my things," I said, cutting straight to the chase, "and to discuss our separation." Daniel's face fell. "Miranda, please. Can't we work this out, for Lily's sake?" Before I could respond, Evelyn interjected. "Now, Miranda, let's not be hasty. Family is everything, after all. And little Lily needs her father." I felt my anger rising. Lily has been doing just fine without a father who chose his mother over his wife and child. Daniel flinched at my words. "That's not fair, Miranda. I've been trying to reach out." "Trying?" I scoffed. "A few text messages asking to see Lily doesn't count as trying, Daniel." Evelyn stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "Now listen here, young lady. You can't keep that child from us. We have rights." "Rights?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "What about my rights? My right to feel safe and respected in my own home? My right to raise my daughter without your constant interference?" As if sensing the tension, Lily began to fuss. I stood up to soothe her, and that's when I saw it, my missing bank book peeking out from under a stack of papers on the side table. My blood ran cold. "What is that doing here?" Daniel followed my gaze, his face paling. "Miranda, I can explain." But I was already moving, snatching up the bank book. As I flipped through it, my worst fears were confirmed. Thousands of dollars, withdrawn without my knowledge or consent. "How could you?" I whispered, my voice shaking with rage and disbelief. Evelyn stepped forward, her face a picture of innocence. "Now, Miranda, don't jump to conclusions. We were just safeguarding your money." "Safeguarding," I exploded. "You stole from me. Both of you." Daniel stood, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Miranda, please, we can explain everything. We were just trying to—" "To what, Daniel?" I spat. "To control me? To keep me dependent on you?" Evelyn's facade finally cracked. "You ungrateful little—" "That's enough," a new voice boomed from the doorway. We all turned to see Douglas, Daniel's father, standing there, his face a mask of fury. "Dad?" Daniel said, shocked. "What are you doing here?" Douglas strode into the room, his eyes blazing. "I came to see my granddaughter, but it seems I've walked into a crime scene instead." He turned to me, his voice softening. "Miranda, I am so sorry. I had no idea things had gotten this bad." As Douglas's words hung in the air, I felt a strange mix of vindication and despair. The truth was finally out, but at what cost? I looked at Daniel, the man I once loved, now a stranger to me. At Evelyn, her mask of benevolence finally shattered, and at Douglas, an unexpected ally in this mess. With Lily clutched tightly to my chest, I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. "I'm calling the police," I said, my voice steady and resolved. "This ends now." The room fell silent as I dialed 911, my hands shaking but my voice steady. Lily, sensing the tension, began to whimper. I bounced her gently, my eyes never leaving Daniel and Evelyn. "Miranda, please," Daniel pleaded, his face ashen. "We can work this out." But it was too late. Years of manipulation, gaslighting, and theft had led to this moment. As I reported the crime to the dispatcher, I watched the reality of the situation dawn on Daniel's face. The police arrived within minutes, their presence filling our once shared home. As they questioned us, the full extent of Evelyn's deceit came to light. Not only had she stolen my bank book and ID, but she had been systematically draining our accounts for months. Daniel's shock seemed genuine, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him. He had chosen his mother over me, over our family, time and time again. As the officers led Evelyn away in handcuffs, she turned to Daniel, her face a mask of desperation. "Daniel, darling, you can't let them do this to your mother." I watched, holding my breath, as Daniel stood frozen, torn between the woman who raised him and the family he had helped create. In that moment, I saw the boy he once was, desperate for his mother's approval, and the man he had failed to become. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered, turning away from her. Evelyn's shrieks echoed through the house as she was escorted out, leaving an eerie silence in her wake. Douglas stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Miranda, I can't begin to express how sorry I am for all of this. I should have seen what was happening, should have stopped it." I nodded, grateful for his support, but too emotionally drained to speak. As the chaos subsided, I found myself alone with Daniel in what was once our bedroom. He sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "I've ruined everything, haven't I?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a strange mix of pity and resolve. "Yes, Daniel, you have. But not just today. This has been happening for years." He raised his head, his eyes red-rimmed. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought I was protecting our family." "No," I said firmly. "You were protecting your mother, at the expense of your wife and child. And now it's time for me to protect Lily and myself." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to say next. "I want a divorce, Daniel, and full custody of Lily." His shoulders slumped, but he didn't argue. "I understand," he said softly. I'll give you whatever you need." As I packed the last of my things, Douglas approached me again. "Miranda, I know I have no right to ask this, but please don't cut us out of Lily's life entirely. She deserves to know her family, flaws and all." I looked at this man, who had remained silent for so long, but had finally found his voice when it mattered most. "We'll see, Douglas. For now, I need time and space to heal." With Lily secured in her car seat and my belongings packed, I stood at the threshold of what was once my home. Daniel and Douglas watched as I prepared to leave, the weight of everything that had transpired hanging heavy in the air. "Goodbye," I said simply, closing the door on that chapter of my life. As I drove away, Lily cooed softly in the back seat. I caught her eye in the rearview mirror and felt a surge of love and determination. "It's just you and me now, little one," I said, my voice strong and clear, "but we're going to be okay. More than okay." The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt free. Free from manipulation, free from doubt, free to be the mother and woman I was meant to be. As the sun set on this tumultuous day, I realized that sometimes the happiest endings come from the courage to write your own story, and that's exactly what Lily and I were going to do.